No one called me on Mother's Day, not my son, not even a quick Happy Mother's Day, Mom. I sat at the table I used to decorate each year, flowers, cinnamon rolls, his favorite jam. The chair across from me stayed empty. I waited, just like last year, and the year before that. But this year, something was different. This year, he did remember. He invited me to a brunch I thought was for me. I baked all night. I wore my nicest blouse. I walked in, heart open, only to find out I wasn't the guest. I was just a name on the list. The real mom of the day was someone else. That's when I knew I didn't belong in his story anymore. But maybe I could write a new one. One where I wasn't just a forgotten mother. One where I was the main character of my own life. Tessa hadn't always been alone on Mother's Day. There was a time, not so long ago, when her kitchen smelled like vanilla and warm cinnamon, and laughter echoed from the hallway where a little boy with tousled brown hair would sprint barefoot, holding a misshapen card that read, "You're the best mommy in the world." She still kept that card, faded and wrinkled, in the drawer near the stove. Sometimes she'd open it just to touch the crayon letters, as if touching them could bring him back to that moment in time. She was 65 now. Her body had softened in places it once held firm. Her hair, once the color of autumn leaves, was now the soft silver of morning mist. She wore her age without shame, like a well-used quilt, worn but comforting. Life had not been kind in every chapter. She lost her husband Michael when she was only 33. One moment he was heading out for a night shift at the factory, and the next she was a widow with a 2-year-old child and a mortgage. She remembered the call, the long silence on the other end, the feeling of her knees giving out on the kitchen floor. But grief didn't get to linger in her life for long. She had Dylan. Dylan had saved her as much as she saved him. He became her reason to keep going, to work double shifts as a nurse in the ER, to skip new shoes and vacation days, all for the promise of a better life for her son. She never remarried. There were men who tried, kind ones, lonely ones, even wealthy ones, but none of them understood what it meant to be everything for one small boy with sad eyes and too much missing. After 30 years in the hospital, Tessa retired and used her savings to open a modest little bakery in her town in Indiana. The hearth and honey sat tucked between a flower shop and a used bookstore, and it smelled of nutmeg and brown sugar all year long. Locals loved it. Children came by for free cookies, old women for warm scones and stories. It was simple, but it made her feel useful, and each Mother's Day, without fail, Dylan would come. Even during his college years in Chicago, he always made it back. He'd bring her coffee and a flower or two, sit across from her with those sleepy eyes she remembered from toddlerhood. He'd ask about the bakery, about her health, about the neighbors. She'd ask about his job, his friends, his latest girlfriend. And for one morning a year, it felt like all the sacrifices made sense. But in recent years, that had changed. The visits became less predictable. Some years he'd only call. Other times he sent flowers by courier with a short note. "Love you, Mom, busy day." She told herself he was just busy. He had a new life, a wife now, and in-laws and meetings. But a part of her couldn't help but notice the shift. The way his voice carried a hint of obligation. The way his questions became fewer. The way she felt like a calendar reminder he sometimes hit snooze on. Still, she prepared. Every Mother's Day, she woke early and made cinnamon rolls the way he liked them. Extra icing, a hint of orange zest. She polished the old teapot he gave her in college and wore the lilac blouse he once said made her look like a spring breeze. She'd set the table for two, light a small candle, and wait. And if he didn't come, she'd still eat the rolls, still sip the tea, still tell herself, maybe next year. Tessa wasn't bitter. That wasn't her way. Life had taught her that people drift, that love doesn't always return the way you gave it. But lately, the silence felt different. He hadn't visited in 3 years. The last time he came, he spent more time texting than talking. When she asked if everything was all right, he gave her that polite smile, the one he used with waiters, and said, "Yeah, just busy stuff." Busy. Always busy, and yet she never forgot. She remembered the way he used to draw little hearts on her coffee cups, the time he cried because he thought he lost the macaroni necklace he made her, the way he clung to her shirt when he was scared of the dark. She remembered it all, even if he didn't. This year, she told herself she wasn't going to hope. But when the phone rang that morning, her heart still jumped. It was him. Hey Mom, got a sec? Dylan's voice was brisk, but familiar. I was thinking, Saj, how about brunch this Sunday? There's this place Lisa's mom's hosting. Should be fun. We'll have mimosas and all that. Tessa blinked. Brunch? Sure, she said softly. That sounds, lovely. She spent the next 2 days baking, not just cinnamon rolls, but her almond poppy seed loaf, his childhood favorite. She ironed her blouse, trimmed her hair, and even practiced her smile in the mirror. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe this was his way of coming back. She didn't know that this brunch would be the beginning of something far more painful than being forgotten. The sun was unusually bright that Sunday. Tessa adjusted the brim of her lavender hat as she stepped out of the cab. A warm box of baked goods cradled in her arms. Her almond poppy seed loaf was still warm, the scent clinging sweetly to the cardboard like perfume. She had tied a yellow ribbon around the box, just like she used to when packing Dylan's lunch for school. The brunch was at Lisa's family home, a large, restored Victorian with blooming hydrangeas and a manicured lawn. Tessa hadn't been there often, maybe once for a quick drop-off. She didn't know most of the guests, but she assumed, as Dylan's mother, her place would be important. She climbed the steps carefully, one hand gripping the wooden railing. Her knees weren't what they used to be. At the door, she took a breath and smiled. Inside, the house buzzed with energy. Laughter, clinking glasses, perfume in the air. She was greeted not by Dylan, but by a tall man in a blazer who took the cake and said, "Oh, right. You must be Dylan's mom." He said it like a question, like he wasn't sure. "Yes," she replied, her voice gentle. "I'm Tessa." The man smiled awkwardly and motioned toward the living room. "Everyone's in there." Tessa walked slowly, her eyes scanning the crowd. There were women in dresses, men in pastel shirts, kids chasing each other between legs. At the center of it all sat Lisa's mother, Patricia, her silver hair in soft curls, pearls around her neck, and a champagne flute in hand. People gathered around her like she was a queen. Tessa spotted Dylan across the room, talking to someone near the fireplace. He saw her, gave a short wave, then went back to his conversation. Her smile faltered. She moved to the food table and stood awkwardly, unsure where to go or who to greet. No one approached. Finally, a woman in a bright pink blazer gestured to a table in the back corner near the kitchen. "You can sit here, dear. Most of the family is up front, but we've got some overflow seating." Overflow, like coats and extra chairs. Tessa sat alone, her hands folded in her lap. She tried not to let her face show disappointment. She looked around for her cake, wondering if it had been placed out. She couldn't see it anywhere. A teenage girl brought her a mimosa. "They're doing speeches soon. Patricia's daughter got her a gold bracelet with their initials on it. Isn't that sweet?" Tessa nodded, though her throat had tightened. A speech? Gifts? She had brought a loaf of bread. At that moment, Dylan approached. "Hey, Mom," he said casually, sliding into the seat beside her. "Glad you made it." "I wouldn't miss it," she answered. "Though, I thought this was for Mother's Day." "It is," Dylan said, sipping his drink. "But Lisa and I decided to do something special for her mom this year. She's been such a support system, you know?" Tessa blinked. "That's lovely." "Yeah," he said, not noticing her hesitation. "We kind of took over planning, so figured we'd host here. Lisa's mom really stepped up when we needed help during the pandemic, so we wanted to honor that." There it was, no mention of Tessa. No gratitude for the 33 years she spent raising him. Just a vague nod to someone else's sacrifices. She felt her heart deflate like a balloon with a slow leak. "I brought the poppy seed loaf," she offered. "Oh, awesome," he said. "Lisa's cousin is gluten-free though, so most of the desserts are alternative, but maybe some folks will try it." Tessa's voice caught. "Did you get my message?" "What message?" "I left one on your voicemail Thursday, just saying I was excited to see you. Wondered if you needed anything for today." "Oh, sorry," Dylan shrugged. "I've been swamped." Swamped. The room erupted into applause as someone tapped a glass for attention. Dylan stood up quickly. "Be right back." Tessa sat still, barely hearing the speech about Patricia's strength, her wisdom, her generous heart. Each compliment felt like a dagger aimed at what she wasn't allowed to be today. People rose to toast. Someone kissed Patricia's cheek. Cameras flashed. Tessa looked down at her hands, wrinkled, still faintly dusted with flour. The fingers that once wiped Dylan's nose, held his hand through nightmares, buttoned his shirts, clapped at his school plays. She wasn't jealous of Patricia, she was invisible, and for the first time in her life, she felt the aching truth. Motherhood was not always rewarded with memory. Sometimes it was replaced. Tessa left before the dessert tray was passed. No one noticed. She slipped out the side door of the Victorian house, her heels sinking slightly into the soft grass as she made her way to the sidewalk. The warm May breeze kissed her cheek, but it didn't soften the sting blooming behind her eyes. Her almond poppy seed loaf was never served. She hadn't even seen where it ended up. Maybe it was still in the box. Maybe it had been tossed. She didn't cry, not yet. That came later, in the quiet of her own kitchen, where the scent of cinnamon still lingered like an echo of something that used to mean joy. She placed the lavender hat back on its hook, unbuttoned her blouse, and stood silently at the sink. Her reflection in the window was soft and pale. She looked like a woman who had expected too much and asked for too little. The next morning, she cleaned. It was the kind of cleaning born from restlessness, methodical, excessive, almost desperate. She scrubbed grout that hadn't seen bleach in years. She rearranged her spice rack, alphabetized the tea, and dusted every forgotten shelf. She didn't hear from Dylan, not that day, not the next. 3 days after the brunch, the phone finally rang. Her heart fluttered like a schoolgirl's, stupid with hope. "Hi, Mom." Dylan's voice was casual, upbeat. "Hi, sweetheart," she answered, steadying herself. "I just wanted to check in. Everything okay after Sunday?" She hesitated. It was different. "Yeah, sorry if it was a little last minute," he said. "Lisa's family goes all out, you know how it is." She bit her tongue. "You planned it with them, didn't you?" "Well, yeah," Dylan replied, "but it was mostly about her mom. I didn't want to make things awkward by splitting attention. You get it, right?" There it was, the words that pressed cold steel against her ribs. You get it, right? As if the erasure of 33 years could be rationalized by politeness. I just didn't want it to be weird for Lisa's side of the family. I mean, you and Patricia are very different people. Tessa felt the air leave her lungs in slow, silent collapse. "I understand," she said, voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause on the line. Not the kind of pause that invites emotion, just a pocket of dead air, as if Dylan was checking a notification or sipping coffee. "Anyway," he said, "I'll swing by next weekend. Maybe grab lunch?" "That would be nice." But he didn't come. Instead, she spent Saturday repotting her succulents and Sunday baking lemon scones no one would eat. By evening, the silence had thickened around her like wool. She opened the drawer near the stove. Inside were 33 cards, one for every Mother's Day, some made with glitter and pipe cleaners, others printed from office templates. The last one was 2 years old. It read, "Thanks for being my constant." She touched the paper lightly, then shut the drawer. Something in her had begun to shift. Not anger, not even sorrow, but the slow, heavy understanding that perhaps she was no longer needed, that her chapter had ended, and no one had told her. She began to see her life in reverse. Dylan's baby shoes, the first scraped knee, science fair projects, prom nights, college drop-offs. She had been everything once, the entire solar system to one small boy. Now she was a name on a list, an obligation wrapped in guilt and seasonal greetings. Tessa started going on longer walks. She sat in the park and watched strangers. She made mental notes of families that talked, laughed, touched. She envied them, not because they were close, but because they still saw each other. On one of these walks, she passed a secondhand bookstore. In the window was a sign, "New beginnings are often disguised as painful endings." She stared at it for a long time. She didn't go in. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The house creaked like an old friend trying to comfort her. She whispered to the silence, "Was I not enough?" But the silence had no answer. And somewhere, in a house full of laughter and golden bracelets, her son was telling stories that didn't include her name. The email arrived late on a Thursday evening. Tessa had just poured herself a cup of chamomile tea and settled into her recliner with a crosswords book when her phone buzzed on the table. The subject line read, "Quick favor, property stuff." It was from Dylan. She opened it with a sense of routine, not anticipation. His emails were usually short, transactional, the kind that assumed closeness without needing to earn it. "Hey Mom," it began. "Hope you're doing well. I've been looking over some stuff with our accountant, and we noticed that the property title for the old house is still under your name. It's a bit of a tax headache, and since you're not really using the place anymore, it'd be simpler if we transferred it. Just sign the attached form when you get a sec. Thanks, D." "No, I miss you. No, how are you feeling? Just a form." Tessa clicked the attachment. It wasn't just the house, it included the bakery. Her hands trembled slightly. The Hearth and Honey, the name still etched into her mind like a hymn, was listed under assets to be consolidated under Lisa Carver Enterprises, LLC. Lisa, not Dylan. She reread the email, searching for a misunderstanding, a missing line of reassurance. There was none. Her bakery, the one she built from decades of savings and broken backs. The one Dylan used to sweep after school, where he made messes with chocolate batter, and where she taught him to love cinnamon before he could pronounce it. He was giving it away, for a business venture. A knock came at the door. Her neighbor Ruth stood outside with a half-used bag of flour. "Borrow this?" Ruth asked, holding it up. "I'm short a cup." Tessa nodded, numb, letting Ruth in. As Ruth chatted casually in the kitchen, Tessa sat down at the table and stared at the printed copy of the transfer form she had just sent to the printer. She didn't sign it. "Dylan said you might be coming by the brunch this weekend again," Ruth mentioned offhandedly. "He and Lisa are planning to turn the bakery space into some kind of organic baby food boutique or something. Trendy idea." Tessa blinked. "What?" "Oh, didn't he tell you?" Ruth sipped from her water glass. "Lisa said it was a done deal." Tessa felt something splinter quietly inside her. That night, sleep wouldn't come. She tossed. She turned. She sat at the edge of the bed, staring into the dark. Finally, she wrapped herself in her robe and walked outside to her garden. It was there, in the still air of 2 a.m., that she heard the voice. Dylan's voice, on the other side of the fence. He was sitting on the porch next door, talking on the phone. His tone was relaxed, even cheerful. The kind he used when the world was light. "No, she hasn't signed it yet," he said. A pause. "No, I'm not worried. I'll call her tomorrow. I think she just needs time to feel like she's still involved or whatever." Another pause. "She's not really part of things anymore. I'm just trying to make her feel like she still has value, you know?" And then the words that would carve themselves into her soul. "My real family is here now. Mom, Lisa gets it. My birth mom's just holding on to old roles." Birth mom, not mom. Tessa pressed a hand to her mouth, as if holding the pain in would make it smaller. The next morning, she didn't open the curtains. She didn't check her emails. She didn't answer Ruth's knock. Instead, she sat at the kitchen table, a single cup of cold tea untouched beside her. She stared at the stack of property documents, the memories layered between the ink, the cake stands, the sticky notes, the mornings with Dylan and chocolate-covered cheeks. Gone. Not just overlooked, but replaced. It wasn't just that she wasn't needed. It was that she had been rebranded, and it hit her, slowly but completely. She wasn't even considered a mother anymore. She was a symbol. A polite afterthought, a relic of the life Dylan no longer wanted to remember. The morning she left, no one knew. Tessa rose at dawn the same way she had for decades, but this time she didn't start the kettle or preheat the oven. Instead, she packed. Quietly, precisely, clothes first, then her sewing kit, the spice tins she couldn't live without, and finally the photo of Dylan as a child. Age 6, tooth missing, frosting on his cheek, holding a wooden spoon like a sword. She almost left it behind, but old habits die slowly. She placed the house key in a small envelope addressed to Ruth and taped it to the inside of the back screen door. No note, no goodbye, no explanation, just a gesture. "Here, it's yours now. Do what you will." The moving truck had come the night before. No logos, no chatter. She'd paid cash. She had told the driver it was just furniture for a summer place. He didn't ask questions. By noon, the house was empty. At the bank, she withdrew her savings. Every last cent. Enough to start fresh, but not enough to erase 65 years of history. Still, it felt clean. Like shedding an old skin. The drive to Vermont took 10 hours. She didn't rush. She took back roads lined with pine and empty fields. She stopped at gas stations where no one knew her name. It was freedom disguised as distance. Her destination? A village so small it barely appeared on the map. One grocery store, a diner, a lake, and a small slanted roof cabin at the edge of the woods, painted a peeling shade of green. She had found it online under seasonal rentals. The listing said, quiet, secluded, good for writing. Or forgetting. Perfect. Tessa signed the lease under her middle name, Marie. She didn't want the past finding her through a mailbox. The landlord was a wiry man with a straw hat and few questions. He handed her the keys, showed her how to light the ancient stove, and left. That night, for the first time in decades, no one knew where she was. And that was the point. She shut down her Facebook account, deleted her email, trashed her old phone. She bought a flip phone with no internet. When the cashier asked if she wanted to keep the old number, she smiled. New number, she said. New life. Each day in Vermont began with dew on the windows and the sound of birds, not sirens or traffic. She learned the rhythm of quiet, how the lake shifted color with the hour, how her garden grew best with late afternoon sun, how her body, so long bent by grief and habit, began to uncurl in the stillness. She planted herbs in reclaimed pots. She built raised beds for lettuce and beets. She baked in a small countertop oven, testing recipes on herself. No one judged her scones if they came out dense. No one noticed if she burned the first batch of muffins. She laughed at herself, out loud. The villagers were kind but distant, which suited her fine. They called her Ms. Marie. They assumed she was a retired teacher or maybe a widow trying to heal. No one asked. She offered little. At night, she wrote in a leather-bound notebook. Day 12. I didn't think I could disappear. Turns out I already had. Day 23. No one's called. It hurts, but it also confirms something I suspected. Day 37. I am not lonely. I am alone. There's a difference. Sometimes she wondered if Dylan had noticed. If he came by the house and found it empty, if he called Ruth, if he panicked, if he felt anything at all. Other times, she didn't care. She bought a bicycle and began riding into town. She joined a library. She signed up for a class on herbal medicine taught by a woman named Joan, who wore crystal necklaces and smelled like lavender. She listened more than she spoke. She was a ghost in her old life. A stranger in this one. But slowly, piece by piece, she became something new. One morning, while kneading dough in the tiny kitchen, she heard a knock at the door. Her heart leapt, then settled. It was only a young boy selling eggs. She bought a dozen and gave him a slice of banana bread. You bake good, he said, mouth full. Thank you, she replied. I used to bake a lot. He looked up. Why'd you stop? She paused. I guess I forgot who I was baking for. He blinked, then shrugged. You could bake for me. She smiled. Maybe I will. That night she wrote, Day 46. Maybe I haven't disappeared. Maybe I've just reappeared, somewhere I was always meant to be. The letter came on a Tuesday. It was tucked inside a plain white envelope with no return address, the kind that could have held anything from a church bulletin to junk mail. But the handwriting was familiar, looped, neat, a little stiff from arthritis. Ruth. Tessa hesitated before opening it. Her hands moved slowly, cautious. She hadn't heard from anyone back home since she disappeared. She wasn't sure she wanted to. Inside was a single page, folded neatly. Dear Tessa, I hope this finds you well, wherever you are. I figured you needed space, and I respected that. But I wanted you to know, Dylan didn't come looking for you, not once. When I told him the house was empty, he said, she probably needed to cool off. That's all. No worry, no urgency, just indifference. Also, I thought you should know Lisa's mother is remodeling your house. They're turning it into some sort of lifestyle showroom for eco-home products. I saw the blueprints. She's calling it the Carver Collective. I'm sorry. Ruth. Tessa stared at the letter for a long time, not because it surprised her, but because it didn't. Her breath caught, a tiny hitch in her throat that passed like a hiccup of grief. Not just about the house or the bakery, but about the truth of what Ruth's words revealed. She had been replaced. Not just emotionally, not just socially, but physically. Walls painted over, floors retiled, the smell of cinnamon and brown sugar bleached out in favor of eucalyptus and curated minimalism. Her memory wasn't just fading, it was being redesigned. She folded the letter neatly, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it into the back of her notebook. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She went to the kitchen and baked. By late afternoon, the scent of fresh muffins filled the cabin. Cranberry orange, her own recipe, the one Dylan never liked, but Michael always adored. She walked into the village square and found a group of children gathered by the library steps. A few were barefoot, one wore a hand-me-down shirt 3 sizes too big. She sat down on the bench nearby and watched. When a small girl with tangled curls and jelly on her chin glanced her way, Tessa smiled and held out a muffin. "Free?" the girl asked. "Free?" Tessa nodded. "No strings attached." By the end of the week, she was handing out warm scones every afternoon. At first, the children were shy, but soon they began calling her Ms. Tess, mishearing her introduction of Marie Tessa. She didn't correct them. Ms. Tess. It felt like a costume at first, but the more she wore it, the more it fit. She rented a corner room at the community center. Nothing fancy, just a folding table, a portable oven, and a chalkboard where she wrote, "Baking Basics, all kids welcome." No charge, no enrollment. Come as you are. They came, and they stayed. They learned how to fold dough, how to measure flour with the back of a butter knife, how to wait patiently for things to rise. They didn't ask where she was from. They didn't care. She wasn't Dylan's mother or Michael's widow or that woman with the missing house. She was just Ms. Tess, the woman who made the best banana muffins in Vermont. One day, a shy boy named Leo asked, "Did you always bake?" "Yes," she said, "but only recently did I remember why." Why? Because baking is honest. It rises or it doesn't. It burns or it doesn't. There's no pretending. You follow the steps. You wait. And if you care enough, something beautiful comes out. The boy blinked, then scribbled her words in a notebook. Tessa walked home that evening with flour on her sleeves and peace in her chest. She realized she no longer checked her phone expecting a missed call. She no longer rehearsed conversations with Dylan in her mind. She no longer imagined returning to the house with the yellow porch swing. That life had ended. But this one, this life of muffins and laughter and names that didn't tie her to disappointment, was hers. Maybe, she thought, being replaced wasn't the tragedy. Maybe it was the invitation to become someone new. It happened on a Wednesday while the muffins were still cooling. The children had just finished their session, sticky fingers dusted with sugar, laughter still echoing through the worn walls of the community center. Tessa stood at the sink rinsing mixing bowls, her back to the door, when a small hand tugged gently at the hem of her cardigan. She turned and looked down into wide, uncertain eyes. Mira. She was the quietest of the group, a wisp of a girl with unbrushed curls, oversized shoes, and a habit of clinging to the edges of conversations like ivy around a gate. Mira rarely spoke unless spoken to, and even then, only in soft syllables. But this time she looked directly at Tessa and said, "Thank you, Mommy Tess." Tessa froze, dish in hand, water running. The words wrapped around her like warm fabric, unexpected and delicate. Not Ms. Tess, not ma'am, not even teacher. Mommy Tess. She crouched down, hands still damp, and brushed a crumb from Mira's chin. "Why'd you call me that, sweetheart?" Mira shrugged, embarrassed. "You make muffins like mommies do on cartoons, and you hug good." Tessa felt her throat tighten. "Do you miss your mommy?" Mira nodded. "She went away. My aunt says she's with the stars." Tessa touched the girl's cheek. "Then the stars are lucky to have her." Mira tilted her head. "Do you have any kids?" Tessa hesitated. The answer rose in her like a reflex. Yes, one son. His name is Dylan, but she didn't say it. Instead, she smiled gently. "Maybe I was just waiting for you." The little girl grinned and wrapped her arms around Tessa's waist. That night, Tessa didn't write in her leather notebook. She wrote in a new one, a pink-covered journal Mira had given her, found at a yard sale. On the first page in crooked letters, Mira had written, "For Mommy Tessa's important thoughts." And so Tessa wrote, "Day 74. Today I was called Mommy Tess. It broke something inside me, but maybe it also fixed something too. She began waking up earlier, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She picked fresh blueberries and experimented with cobbler. She hand-sewed aprons for the children, each with their names embroidered across the front. Mira's was purple, with a crooked heart stitched above the eye. The garden grew, so did her joy. One afternoon, as she and Mira sat on the porch sipping lemonade, Mira asked, "Why don't you have your own kids around here?" Tessa looked at the sky. A hawk circled far above, elegant and alone. "Maybe because you didn't find me sooner," she replied. Mira giggled, then leaned against her side. "I'm glad I did." So was Tessa. The children came more often now, even when there wasn't a class. They brought crumpled recipes and told her about their days. She was part counselor, part chef, part secret keeper, and she never once corrected the name they gave her. Mommy Tess, she found herself humming again, little tunes she hadn't sung since Dylan was in a booster seat, banging a spoon on the table. She started braiding flowers into her hair. She tried watercolor painting and wasn't half bad. In the evenings, she lit a single candle and read under its glow. Memoirs, cookbooks, sometimes poetry. Her favorites were the poems that didn't rhyme, the ones that told stories in jagged pieces, like life. One night she wrote, "Day 83. I think I am finally remembering who I was before the world told me who to be." Another night, day 89. "I don't miss my old house. I miss who I thought I was supposed to be inside it." She didn't think about Dylan every day anymore, but when she did, it no longer felt like an open wound, more like a scar, faded, healed over, a part of her but no longer defining her. She mailed a small package to Ruth one morning. A loaf of cinnamon bread, her signature recipe, and a note that simply said, "I'm okay now. Let them keep the house. I've built a better one, inside myself." Then she signed it. "Love, Mommy Tess." It came in another plain envelope, this one with Dylan's name printed in bold letters, the return address neatly typed beneath. For a moment, Tessa's hands trembled. She had not seen his handwriting or name in months, and part of her, a stubborn, soft part, hoped it might be a note of reconciliation. A late apology, a clumsy but sincere, "I've been thinking of you, Mom." But when she opened the envelope, the contents were stark and cold. A legal form, requesting formal documentation that Tessa Marie Whitmore had been absent without contact for more than 90 days. In the attached note, Dylan wrote, "Hi, Mom. We've been advised to formalize the property transfer since we haven't heard from you and have reason to believe you've relocated or perhaps had some sort of breakdown. No judgment, of course. But legally, it'd help if you could sign off on this affidavit confirming that you are not available to handle property decisions anymore. It's mostly a formality, so we can wrap up the deed stuff. Lisa's business launch is coming up fast. Thanks for understanding. Hope you're well wherever you are. Dylan." No, I miss you. No, are you okay? Not even a phone number to call. Just a gentle request to legally erase herself from his life. Tessa sat at the table for a long time. Mira played with blocks in the living room, humming to herself. Outside, the wind rustled the leaves like whispers from lives long gone. She read the note again. "Reason to believe you've relocated or perhaps had some sort of breakdown." Her jaw clenched. She folded the document carefully and placed it in the center of the table. Then she got up, made tea, and stared out the window while it steeped. Dylan had not lost her. He had let her go. There was a difference. The next morning, she took the form to the small post office at the edge of town. She brought her own pen, signed the affidavit in black ink, but where it asked for legal name of absent individual, she did not write Tessa Marie Whitmore. She wrote, "Tess, no longer a mother." Below, she added in tiny script, "This is to confirm that the woman who once raised you is no longer reachable, not because she is missing, but because she is no longer yours." She sealed the envelope. She walked to the mailbox, stood still for a second, her hand hovering over the slot, and then, without ceremony, she dropped it in. No anger, no tears, just silence, and a sense of completion. That evening, she sat in the garden as the sky turned lavender. Mira curled up beside her with a half-finished muffin in one hand and a stick in the other, tracing hearts in the dirt. "Mommy Tess," she said softly, "do mommies die when they go away?" Tessa looked at the child, then at the horizon. "Sometimes," she said. "Sometimes they're just reborn." Mira nodded solemnly. I think you came back as a superhero. Tessa smiled. Then I'll need a cape. I'll make you one. Later that night, she opened her journal. Day 102. Today I signed my own obituary. Not the kind with black ink and funeral flowers, but the kind that closes a chapter so a better one can begin. I am no longer the woman who waited at a window for a knock that never came. I am no longer the mother of a man who couldn't see me. I am Mommy Tess, and that is enough. She closed the book, blew out the candle, and went to sleep with a sense of peace that didn't come from being remembered, but from finally choosing to forget. By the first frost of October, the town had learned to mark its mornings by the smell of fresh bread. It started with whispers. Someone had noticed the scent of warm brioche drifting down Pine Street. Then came the scones, blueberry with a hint of thyme, wrapped in parchment and left anonymously on the library bench. Soon, children started arriving at the community center early, noses twitching, fingers crossed. When the little wooden sign appeared one morning, Miracle Oven, open 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. only. It wasn't long before a line began forming before dawn. No one knew who ran it. The building was a repurposed tool shed at the edge of the community garden, painted a cheerful yellow. The interior held nothing fancy. An old oven, a battered counter, 2 baskets, and the smell of home. And behind the counter, always in a floral apron and dusted with flour, stood Miss Tess. She never said much, just smiled, handed over pastries with quiet warmth, and always remembered your name and favorite flavor. For some, it was the only moment of real gentleness they experienced all day. At precisely 8 o'clock, she closed the shutters, no exceptions. The townsfolk tried to ask more, where she came from, who she used to be, what brought her here, but she always deflected with a soft chuckle and a line like, I've been many things. Right now, I'm just a baker. Word spread quickly. Tourists tried to catch her, food bloggers passed through, hoping to get an interview. She declined every request. The oven doesn't perform for cameras, she said once, which only made the rumors more enchanting. Children adored her. They brought her wildflowers and crayon drawings. They called her Ms. Tess, or sometimes just the Muffin Queen, but never Mom. And oddly, that gave her peace. She no longer needed the title. She had earned the trust, the affection, the smiles that came not from duty, but from connection. In many ways, this was her resurrection. She was healthy. She walked daily. She read again. Her garden thrived. Her laughter came easily. Even her reflection, lined and soft, no longer felt like a stranger. She wrote in her journal every evening. Day 127. Mira asked if I'll ever move away. I told her the truth. Only if the wind picks me up and carries me off. Day 138. I passed a mirror and didn't wince. Day 141. The bakery sold out in 22 minutes. Not bad for a ghost. One evening as the sun dipped behind the hills, she sat on her porch sipping tea. Mira curled beside her, humming softly, as if creating a soundtrack to their shared silence. Do you think you'll ever be a real mom? Mira asked suddenly. Tessa didn't flinch. I think I already am, she answered, brushing a crumb from Mira's cheek. Just not in the way people expect. Mira nodded as if that made perfect sense. You're like the heart mom. You don't need blood. Tessa smiled. The wind rustled through the apple trees. Somewhere in the distance, a fox barked. The stars blinked awake. And for the first time in her long life, Tessa felt complete. Not because someone called her mom, but because she had become someone worth being, regardless of title. In this tiny corner of the world, she was not forgotten. She was chosen. It began with a notepad and a camera. The young woman appeared one morning, just before the line began to form. She wore a knit beanie, oversized glasses, and the unmistakable gleam of curiosity in her eyes. While others waited for scones, she lingered by the sign, scribbling notes and snapping photos of the weathered yellow shed. Tessa spotted her from inside but said nothing. She recognized the type, the hungry-eyed seekers who turned stories into headlines. When the woman reached the front of the line, she smiled. Miss Tess, right? Tessa nodded. I'm Eliza, local paper. Heard whispers about your miracle muffins and wanted to write a human interest piece. Just a feel-good story. You'd be surprised how far those go these days. Tessa hesitated. I don't want my face in it or my history. Of course, Eliza said quickly. I'll keep it anonymous. Just your words. Why you bake? Why 1 hour? Why free? After a moment, Tessa relented. You can sit on the bench while I work. The article came out the following week. The 1-hour oven, the woman who feeds with flour and silence. It was warm, respectful, full of poetic phrases and quotes like, I don't bake for money. I bake for mornings that start with kindness. The story went local viral. People shared it online with captions like, restore your faith in humanity. Some readers guessed her identity, most didn't. The article traveled, hop, share, repost, and one of those hops landed in Dylan's inbox. He had been living in a short-term apartment by then. Lisa had left, taken the showroom, the name, even the business plan. The house had been sold. The bakery, a flop. His world, once curated and crisp, was now paper-thin. When he read the article, the words hit like breadcrumbs from a lost trail. She doesn't accept tips, doesn't explain herself. She only says, 1 hour's enough to feed a soul. He stared at the screen. Ms. Tess. He said the name out loud. A week later, he showed up in Vermont. The villagers watched curiously as a well-dressed stranger approached the yellow shed. Tessa saw him through the service window. Her hands paused mid-frost. She stepped outside, wiping them on her apron. Dylan's face was gaunt, older. His eyes scanned hers with 1,000 unspoken memories. Mom? Tessa tilted her head slightly. I'm sorry, I think you're mistaken. He blinked. It's me, Dylan. I know who you are, she said quietly. But I'm not who you're looking for. What? I'm Tess, she said calmly. The woman you knew, the mother who raised you, cried for you, baked for you, she's gone. His jaw tightened. You don't mean that. She looked away. When you asked me to sign away the house, when you said I'd had a breakdown, that was your obituary for me. I just honored it. I didn't know where you were. You didn't look, she interrupted gently. Not really. Silence stretched between them. A customer behind him coughed awkwardly. Dylan swallowed. Lisa's gone. I lost everything. I thought maybe we could start again. A flicker of something passed through her. Regret? Sadness? A last ember of maternal instinct? But she shook her head. I'm glad you found your way here, but this place, this life, isn't yours. It was built from ashes you didn't think to search through. You're really not coming back? I already did, she said softly. Just not to you. Dylan stood there unmoving as she turned and walked back into the shed. Inside, Mira waited, licking jam from her fingers. Was that a customer? She asked. No, sweetheart, Tessa replied, pulling a tray from the oven. Just a traveler, looking for a place he once knew. Mira nodded. Did he find it? Tessa placed the tray down and smiled. No, but sometimes getting lost is how we find what we're really looking for. That day, the line outside the miracle oven was longer than usual, but inside, Tessa worked with steady hands, her heart strangely light, because for the first time in a very long time, she had nothing left to lose, and everything worth keeping. Dylan stayed, not in the way sons visit mothers, but like strangers lingering in towns they can't name the reason for. He booked a room at the inn across from the general store, paid in cash, and kept to himself. He didn't ask for directions. He already knew the path. Each morning at 7 sharp, he appeared outside the miracle oven. He didn't stand in line. He didn't knock. He sat on the wooden bench beneath the oak tree, coffee in hand, watching. Tessa saw him, of course, every day, but she never acknowledged him. She moved with the same rhythm as always, kneading, rolling, brushing tops with egg wash, humming a tune from the 70s. She passed muffins through the service window with her gentle smile and quiet grace. To everyone else, she was exactly the same. To Dylan, she was unreachable. On the 3rd morning, a child dropped their cookie. Dylan picked it up, dusted it off instinctively, and offered a new one from his pocket. I bought an extra, he said. The child took it and ran off. Tessa saw the gesture. Her hands didn't pause. On the 5th morning, Dylan helped an elderly man with a cane walk back to his car. He returned to the bench, his eyes searching Tessa's face. She didn't look up. He wanted her to yell, to cry, to say something, anything that meant the story wasn't finished. But she didn't. She let the silence tell its own truth. In the evenings, Dylan wandered the village. He saw the playground where Mira and her friends played tag with flower-stained shirts. He saw the mural on the community center wall, a painting of Ms. Tess, surrounded by children, their hands raised high, as if in mid-laughter. He read the quotes painted beneath. 1 hour is enough. Kindness doesn't ask for a reason. He saw her signature. Ms. Tess, no mention of mom. By the 7th morning, Dylan sat without his coffee. His hands were empty. So was his expression. The miracle oven opened. Tessa worked. The line buzzed with chatter, but Dylan remained still. At 8 a.m. sharp, the shutters closed. The children clapped as they always did. Another morning of sweetness, of safety. Tessa stepped outside to sweep the steps. For a moment, Dylan thought, maybe today. He stood. Tess, she paused. Can I ask one question? She didn't nod, but she didn't walk away either. Why didn't you tell me you were hurting? She met his eyes. Why didn't you see it? He exhaled, words trapped in his throat. I was blind, caught up. I thought, I know what you thought, she said gently. That I'd always be there, that I bend, that mothers don't break. He lowered his gaze. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm not angry, she replied. He looked up, surprised. I'm not angry, she repeated. I just evolved. Do you miss me? She didn't answer right away. I miss who you were, she said. The boy with frosting on his cheek, the one who drew cards with hearts too big for the page, but that boy doesn't live in you anymore. And the mother who lived for him? She doesn't live in me either. Dylan's eyes welled, but he blinked them dry. So, this is it? This, she said, is peace, not punishment, not revenge, just truth. He stood quietly for a moment, then he nodded. I'll leave tomorrow. She nodded once. He turned to go. As he walked away, she swept the last of the crumbs from the steps. Inside the miracle oven, the scent of cinnamon lingered in the air. Outside, the bench under the oak tree stood empty once more, and somewhere in the silence, something settled. Not broken, not repaired, just done. The morning after Dylan left, the sky hung low with spring mist. The usual bustle outside the miracle oven had quieted, like the town itself paused to exhale. The door creaked slightly as Tessa entered, arms full of flour and lemon zest, apron freshly laundered. Everything was in its place except for one thing. On the center table, where her cooling rack usually sat, was a loaf of banana bread, wrapped in wax paper, tied with twine. No note. But she knew the shape of the pan, the way the top had cracked slightly in the middle. The cinnamon-dusted crust. It was hers, her old recipe, the one Dylan had loved as a boy and ignored as a man. He had baked it. She could see his effort in every imperfection, the uneven browning, the too generous handful of walnuts. He had remembered something. Maybe too late, but he remembered. She stood there for a long time, staring. Then, without a word, she walked past it. She opened the shutters at 7 a.m. The line formed. The oven worked its gentle magic. Muffins were passed. Thanks were whispered. Smiles exchanged. But the banana bread remained untouched. By 7:47, Mira arrived, cheeks pink from running, pigtails swinging. Smells different today, she chirped, hopping onto the bench. Tessa said nothing. Mira's eyes caught the loaf. Is that a new flavor? Tessa shook her head. Just something someone left behind. Can I try? Tessa hesitated, then nodded. If you like. Mira peeled back the paper, tore off a piece, and took a bite. She chewed thoughtfully, lips puckered slightly as if analyzing. It's okay, she said finally, wiping a crumb from her chin, but not as good as yours. Tessa chuckled softly. Why not? It's missing something, Mira replied. Yours tastes like hugs. This one's kinda nervous. Tessa smiled, her eyes misting before she could stop them. Mira popped another bite in her mouth. Also, he put too many walnuts. Rookie move. Tessa reached for a cloth and began wiping the counter, blinking faster now. Hey, Mommy Tess, Mira said between chews. You're the best baker in the world. No, Tessa murmured, just this little town. Mira tilted her head. Nope, the world. The shutters closed at 8 a.m. The customers faded. Mira waved goodbye and skipped down the road. Tessa stood alone again. She looked at the half-eaten banana bread on the table, now oddly smaller, less meaningful. And then, quietly, almost ceremoniously, she picked it up, carried it outside, and left it on the edge of the compost bin. Not with anger, not as rejection, but as closure. She walked back inside, washed her hands, and lit a candle on the small shelf she kept near the window. It wasn't for Dylan, it wasn't for Michael, it wasn't even for the woman she used to be. It was for Tess, the woman who had been broken, buried, forgotten, and still found a way to rise. That night, as the stars blinked awake above Vermont, the wind carried the scent of orange zest and rosemary scones, and in a town that never asked her to explain herself, a child whispered to her foster kitten, "She's not just a baker, she's a superhero in an apron." And somewhere, inside that quiet truth, Tessa finally knew. She was not honored because she was someone's mother. She was loved because she chose to become someone worth remembering.